Kia ora and welcome to Safe as Houses. We're your hosts. I'm Alistair,
And I'm Kate.
and we're here to guide you on how to make houses safer so it's you and not the next natural hazard that decides your future. In this episode, we're going to cover what you can do about natural hazards, including how you can reduce your risk at home.
In our last episode, we spoke about what natural hazards are and which ones might affect where you live and your property or your future property. And I just also wanted to add, if checking maps and doing research isn't your thing, then we can also make it a little bit easier too. What are some of the things that we should be thinking about, Alistair, when it comes to a property?
Question? I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, so if I was going to tell you like my quick fire things to look for, it would be, is the house on a hill near a steep slope?
Yes.
Okay. And why I'm thinking about that is because of landslides. I'm also thinking, is my house in a low lying area? And low lying specifically because of floods. So that's important also if you're in an urban area, and also if you have a house near a river or a stream. And I'm also going to add in a large drain as well, because we don't often talk about drains, but drains have a very important role in terms of our stormwater systems and flooding. And also if you live near the coast.
Yeah, on my street, we've got loads of drains that do block regularly on from all the leaves. They're away from my house, which was a relief to find out. And the house like slopes away, so the water goes away. So I was like, okay, that's good when I was looking at it. But man, yeah, you see those massive, massive puddles that build up. And like I live in Wellington and central Wellington as well. And you kind of see the buses go through and you think, yeah, when that reaches capacity, when there's a big storm, lots of the shops flood as well. So it's just something it's definitely worth bearing in mind.
Yeah. And so I think along with that, so Alistair, you just mentioned that your house is like at the top of the slope. That's actually the same with me. My house is at the top of the slope too. And that's purely because it's also thinking about how water drains. Sometimes I see houses and they're like down a really like steep concreted driveway. And those ones also make me really nervous because of just where that water flows. If your house is down a driveway and you're at the bottom of the driveway, also think about where that water flows and encourage that away from the house as much as possible, or just something to consider if you're also looking at buying a house, I guess, too.
Totally, definitely.
So those are things I think to think about when you're like looking at a house, if you're not necessarily like checking out a map per se. You're not wanting to get all technical and read different reports. If you're not a researcher, just like, you know, type type A personality. Those are the tips for your type Bs.
Totally. And I kind of think also then when I'm thinking about where I want to live, I also then look at the house itself. And I think there's like, I guess, similar things you can do when you look at the house itself to kind of think, okay, is this going to be a risk to me, my family, or to my investment? Like, is this something that could get damaged in a natural hazard event? I think the one that kicks off the top of my list, my pet peeve, are chimneys in New Zealand. We have an awful lot of chimneys in New Zealand. We have a lot fewer chimneys in Christchurch. Why is that, Kate?
Lots of them came down in the earthquake. So
Yeah.
that's usually what happens is the earthquake shaking happens and the chimneys are usually unreinforced. And that's the thing that falls through your roof or off the side of your house and causes a bit of damage.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Pretty scary in terms of also, who's in the home at the time of the earthquake shaking. And I also think you also have to consider your risk profile as well. Like do you have a young family? Who's going to be around at the time of that earthquake shaking?
Yeah,
That's really.
I've had friends who live in houses with old like gravity fed like concrete water sort of systems, and they have those up in the roof as well, and they are also a risk in of like falling through the ceiling. Like if you think something that's that heavy that you can't get it out of the ceiling, that can then easily fall through the jib or the construction of your ceiling and just kind of do exactly the same thing, fall straight through the house. So it's definitely worth checking out kind of quirky features of your house and kind of think basically if there's something really heavy up high that can actually do a lot of damage. If there's enough earthquake shaking, it can come loose and it can then cause a lot of damage.
I didn't even know those existed. So that's
Mm,
a really handy thing to know about.
yeah, definitely.
But I think also another thing that would add to that list is hot water cylinders. So hot water cylinders, if they are not attached to the wall, in your hot water cylinder cupboard, those can also be, shaken around a little bit. income attached, and then you have a flood inside your house, which no one ever wants when you're having to deal with wet, soggy carpets and an
Totally.
earthquake.
Totally. And then also thinking in earthquake, I saw some things I can't unsee when I did some house hunting in Wellington, which knowing what I know, I was like, let's look at the foundations. Let's have a look at how the floor is attached to the ground. I would recommend not buying a house that has a car jack underneath it.
No, you saw it. You went and visited a property that had a car jack underneath the house, like holding the house up.
Yeah, and I was under the house to see that, and then I immediately said to my partner, "We need to go."
Yeah.
And get 1 to a safe place and 2 not buy this house. Yeah, there's I mean, yeah, we'll get on to what we can do about all these things, but yeah, it's definitely worth checking the foundations. There are some pretty interesting things in those spaces. Hopefully not many properties that are held up by carjacks, but what we do see an awful lot of is houses that aren't necessarily attached to their foundations. Now, if we have houses that have big wooden poles or sort of foundation poles, and then you've got a house sat on top of that. Normally, gravity is pretty good at keeping the house exactly where it is. Like it's a
Yeah.
pretty heavy thing, a house, and you've got lots in it. But again, if you have a really big earthquake shake, it can just like fall off. Basically, it can just fall off and
Slide
over those
off.
foundations and slide off. Yeah. So there's plenty we can do in these. And I think maybe we'll get onto these. Is what we can do about solving those problems. But it's definitely another one to look out for.
'Cause I guess there's the other thing though, like, right? Like, it could be an opportunity for someone to be like, "Oh,
Totally.
yeah, this house needs to be repiled," and at the same time as repiling this house because, we know that that investment's needed, you might be getting a house for a little bit cheaper because someone's not wanting to, pay for the piles to be done,
And do the
but at that
work.
same time, you also know that when you're redoing the piles on your house, potentially, is that you've got more secure foundations for the house. If you're in an area that has higher earthquake risk, it's definitely something to think about and worth investing in, I guess.
Definitely. So while you can't like change the location, there are definitely things you can do to improve most of what we've actually spoken about. Now, landslide risk is quite a tricky one. If you've got a really big hill above your house, there's not a huge amount you can do. There's definitely like you can add in retaining walls. It's a pretty big job though. Some people do kind of
Inexpensive.
spray and expensive, yeah. Some people do like sprayed concrete that can actually stabilize the slope for a little bit, but it's usually kind of like a thin layer of concrete. If it's a big enough earthquake or landslide, it will break out through that. So that's something just to kind of be aware of. Um, on the flooding side, similarly, you can kind of channel flood flows. So if it's that surface water flooding that we were talking about, like water running down a slope, you can often have that kind of channeled away from your property. So that is something you can kind of do a little bit of landscaping to help with. But if it's enough water, it'll go through your house. So that's where you've got to kind of understand the depth of that risk.
Yeah.
And again, that's fairly involved doing all that work.
Yeah. And I guess that the other important thing to think about, when we're talking about like channelizing flow away from houses, in the amount it's also like when flooding happens, we're actually wanting to slow down the speed of water. So it's got the chance for it to drain away, ideally
Yeah,
naturally,
in through the
or,
soil, hopefully.
like slow down the speed of it so there's like less amount of it going into the drains. And so, thinking more about your, planting as an option, to move water flows around a house, to increase like how much water is actually infiltrating into the ground as well. So if you were thinking of concreting your driveway, that's something that might actually increase the flooding potential if you're creating a surface for that water to flow over. It's also thinking
Definitely.
about how you do things and what sort of surfaces that you use as well.
Yeah. One other one that I often catch in respect to flooding is where people put their heat pump out, like the outside unit. So often those are just sat on the ground outside. And I
Yeah.
find it quite interesting when you see houses that are in, say, like a floodplain area, and the house itself is like a meter and a half off the ground with like some steps up to the house. And you kind of go,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And then you step outside and you see that they've got their heat pump like on the ground. Like,
This is me. I've
oh right,
literally never thought about this before, but, like,
mate.
my heat pump is, like, literally on the ground outside my house, and my house is, like, higher.
Yeah.
I never
So
thought about that before.
So often one of the things that like the reason why the houses are a bit higher is because there's a little bit of a flood risk there. Like that's
Yeah.
usually why the house is built higher. So to kind of make yourself a bit like more resilient, you can make sure that you move that heat pump outside unit higher so it doesn't
Yeah.
get like destroyed in a flood.
Hey, that is definitely going on my future to-do list because I think my heat pump will need to be graded sometime in the future. And so when that happens, I would definitely be raising where that heat pump is sitting because, yeah, as you say, that unit is like right outside, yeah, on the ground.
Yeah. And that's such a good point as well, Kate. Like all of these things can be built in. Like I think sometimes we hear about things that we could or should do and we kind of think, oh yeah, I should do that. And then you don't get round to it. But I think and then some people panic as well. I kind of go, I've got
Yeah.
to do it now. And I think it's about slow and steady improvements. So I think that's a really good example of like, yeah, when my heat pump needs replacing, that's a really good time to make sure that when I get the new one, I'm gonna raise it. Like moving on to the same with the chimney. A lot of the time, people have their roof done. Such a good time to take a chimney down. You go, oh, the roof's nearing the end of its life, or I'm going to get it painted, or I'm going to do something to do some improvement work on that roof. That when you've got all the work happening on the roof, that's such a good time to then be like, let's take the chimney down at the same time.
Is this a good time to admit that I also have a chimney that I have not taken down?
Okay. But I think but it's so right though, isn't it? Where it's just like being aware of it and kind of going, okay, that's something I can do in the future.
Yeah, totally. And I
But
think for
that
me
shows you have a higher risk tolerance than me.
No, but I think I've definitely like, I've thought about it because, like, it's on the far side of the house, so I think, less likely to have an impact because it's also quite near some pretty, yeah, sizable things, but it is something I've definitely thought about, and I do think about because I did see the video of the one being taken down in Wellington and how did you see how heavy it was as well and the amount of bricks that were taken down?
What did it weighed like the same as like an elephant or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was like maybe it wasn't an elephant, but it was really heavy.
Yeah,
Like
like, it was definitely like a couple of tons, I think,
it
hey?
was heavy. Like and it was
Yeah,
just like a kind of standard. It wasn't like, sometimes you see those really tall chimneys and you're like, that's
yeah,
really tall. Like
yeah,
it was just like there's a chimney. It was
yeah,
but because
and
it's
so
just
it's
like
like
brick on concrete on brick on like it's just like really
yeah,
heavy. Yeah.
and I sort of think that's, like it's definitely something I've thought about it for so long, but again, like, I guess, as you say, it reflects my risk tolerance
Yeah.
and
I think
also, what I'm, investing in my house as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are the kind of things you can kind of work around. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think just to cover off by work around, I mean, like just tick them off the to-do list, add them to
yeah,
do list. And then as you're going and doing other projects around the house, you go, right, I'm going to do that
yeah,
now. And then, yeah, to cover off the foundations, that's like a really key one in that you can get kind of Z bracing bolts. Like if you've got a wooden foundation, you can get nails, they're called Z nails, and they kind of just go into the foundation pole itself and then into the floor or the beams on the floor of the house.
mm,
So that means that if there is an earthquake, like that it won't move because it's actually nailed into. So you've just
mhm,
connected those two things there, which is really helpful because you don't want your house sliding off.
yeah. But Alistair, for houses, like, I feel like more modern houses are now built onto concrete. What should people be looking for if they're looking at, like, a house that's concrete or they own a house that's got concrete foundations rather than, like, built on piles, so to speak?
I don't know. Concrete slab's one of the pretty resilient one, but is there something you're angling at here, Kate?
No, I was just
No.
there was a general
Yeah.
question if you knew something that I didn't know about concrete foundations.
Yeah, you want to make sure that it depends on like this is where I'm running out of my expertise and into getting a qualified builder involved. But like there definitely are like concrete slabs. Like if you've got a concrete slab that's got cracks in it or got breaks in it, then you would want to fix that
Mm,
foundation because similarly, if the foundation itself isn't in good nick, then it will be exacerbated. Like the problem will
yeah,
be made worse by there being an earthquake.
mm,
So if it's already like, oh, it's got a big crack in it, but don't worry about that. Well, if it's got a big crack in it and then it gets a big shake, then where do you think half the house is going?
yeah.
It's gonna be a problem because it's not a solid functioning house. It's got breaks in it. Yeah.
And I guess that's actually reminded me of something that I've always remembered after a conversation with the engineer after the Kaikoura earthquakes in 2016, is that He'd actually been out doing a whole of like building checks after the
Yeah,
earthquake, and they were doing like the visual inspections, because I guess there's actually like quite a lot that you can see, in the building after an earthquake. And one of the things that he said that you could like always look for and always to consider is like cracks in the corners of like homes and houses, etc. And then also, like as you said, cracks in foundations as well. And so that's something that the engineers were always looking for. So as when you see any of those cracks, it just shows that there's been enough movement to, cause that damage. So um,
totally.
it's like, when it's just something that you're like, oh, this technical expert is looking for a crack, I can look for a crack
I
too.
can look. Yes, I found that when I got building reports for like the houses I was considering to buy, and then afterwards I was like, "Oh, that's so simple." Like they were just looking for like really things I saw, but wasn't like, "Oh, that's a sign that I should." I was like, "No, it was an expensive way to learn that lesson, but also now I know it." So
Yeah.
like blown windowsills, like that means that the cladding is probably like not functioning properly, and then the inside of the house is probably rotten because
Yeah.
like the moisture's got in there, and then that's led to the windowsill being blown.
Yeah.
So, all those sort of those fun facts.
Yeah.
Another fun fact for you,
Yeah.
houses that are not regular shape, they are more likely to experience damage in an earthquake because there's been research that's kind of like the squarer a house, the more likely it's just to kind of, it will retain its shape. If you've got
Mhm.
those houses that are like kind of like a random view in shape and that they've had an extension added on, and they like those houses that they want to kind of, the building wants to kind of stay square, so then it's more likely to have damage in those kind of slightly weird shaped properties. Doesn't mean that you can't design it to withstand that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
just something that we've seen in the research where square shapes tend to work better, tend to be more resilient in
That's
earthquakes.
super interesting. So let's go for your plain Jane basic square house, and you're going to be
Yeah,
hopefully potentially better off.
you just want that quarter acre dream house, eh? Not in Wellington. No such thing as a quarter acre.
Yeah. But I think that like that kind of brings into like, an important point is also like around affordability, right? So like all of these things that we're talking about, it's always that like way up and toss up in terms of affordability is like, what can you afford? Like, can you afford, I don't know, the house that has damaged foundations, or the house in the flood zone? And so it's, having those conversations in terms of like, can we, put aside some money to redo our, foundations and buy those Z clips, what were they?
Dead nails.
Z nails that you were
Yeah.
talking about, or are we more willing to live in a flood zone area where potentially our house is going to be underwater?
Yeah, and I think it's that kind of, what's interesting about a lot of risk reduction stuff is that it's cheaper to do in the long run, but it's totally understandable. And I think people see that initial guaranteed expense and you kind of think, no, it's not worth me spending X $100 taking down my chimney. But
Mm,
then you think about all the damage that that chimney can do falling through the house, destroying all the things on the way through, as well as the potential effects on your family, yourself and your
yeah.
family,
Yeah.
and you kind of weigh that up, and that's kind of, so it's kind of those things that, yeah, I think it's a really tricky balance, and I think it's something that I want to work, well, we're trying to do through this podcast is raise awareness and then also try and make that journey easier. One of the key things I think is a lot of the time, well, I think some people are aware of these actions that they can take, and then there's like a really big gap
Mm,
in terms of educating and understanding between like, I think I maybe, there might be quite a lot of people who know how to know they should take their chimney down,
yeah.
but like actually getting to the stage of taking your chimney down is a big long journey. And that's what this is all about, because there's the whole like, okay, well, who do I contact? And then how do I actually do that? And how much does it cost? And am I like, is it even worth me doing it? And when's the right time for me to do it? There's all that kind of that chain of information
Mm,
to get you to make that decision. And everyone's busy. We're busy. We've got loads on. Like it's just another expense. Is it worth my time? And I think we just want to, this is part of giving you the education so that you understand it better. It makes the decision easier and you go, yeah, that's worth it to me, or it's not worth it to me. And it's something I'm happy to live with.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I think like that's such an important thing to say, because I think already just having this discussion, like I know I'm gonna be upgrading my heat pump in future. Yeah, I'll now be upgrading my heat pump and then also moving it higher as well. So it's like some of these actions don't even need to happen right now. These can be,
Totally.
something for the future. But just
Absolutely.
to kind of like prompt how you make those decisions, I guess.
Yeah, and knowing like, oh, that's something I want to do. So when I don't know, change my kitchen or when I do something else, like it's going to be the right time for me to then also do that other thing. It's
Yeah.
really like it's got to be so frustrating if you're like, I don't know, I've just redone my floor, and then I found out that I needed floor access to like tie down my house for like to do the foundation or those
Yeah.
sorts of things. I've just redone my roof and then I didn't get the chimney taken down. So it's kind of those sort of things that are like easy add-ons. But
Yeah.
then you're like, oh yeah, that's given me peace of mind now that I've done that thing and I knew about it and knew how to do it. So yeah.
And so, like, when you were looking for your house, Alistair, like, what were some of the things that you were like, hell no? Like, you've already spoken about the car
Well,
jack. Like,
I
that feels like a strong hell no. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's quite hard for me because, well, it's very hard for me because, like, I work in natural hazards all day, every day. So, like, was I going to live in a tsunami zone? Hell no. Like, is that something that's quite low risk? Like, hell yes. So, but for me, so I managed to find a house that's like level with the edge of a tsunami zone.
yeah,
like it's part of a complex that has a retaining wall, but like my house is far from like the point of the retaining wall that would be damaging, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So I'm kind of like, I have to get through two houses to get to me, which isn't a great way to think, but it is the way I think.
yeah.
It's got a slope, and I was like, oh, yep. Because the council actually, the LIM,
Mhm.
the Land Information Memorandum, which comes with every house, did say like this is in a flood zone. But then I
Yeah,
had a look at the land, and I was like, oh, I can see it's a well. One, I could see that the depth of the flood was going to be below the entry height of my door, and it's a concrete pad. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
cool. It shouldn't really come in.
yeah,
And then I knew the water was sloping away, so I was like, that's okay. Yeah, we saw a lot of houses that were under a big kind of cliff, and that was a hell no.
yeah,
Hell no to being like too close to an earthquake fault line for myself. As you can see, I did a bit of research
yeah.
finding all that kind of stuff. And then yeah, it was sort of I remember speaking to an estate agent and they were like, whereabouts are you looking? And I was like, Wellington. And they were like, that's a big search area. And I was
Yeah,
like, you find me a house that fits my criteria in Wellington. So I get it. It's like a needle in a haystack kind of thing.
yeah,
But those were, and so things that I was like, oh, I actually made an offer on plenty of houses that had chimneys. I just
mhm,
made sure that when I made the offer on the house, I factored in the cost of taking down the chimney to then go, okay, that's one of the first things I personally would do. So then
yeah,
that's like, I've got the money to do that. Same with the foundations. So yeah, same with, a bunch of the things we were kind of looking at.
yeah.
I would just kind of spot those things and then go, oh, I'll try and take that cost off the offer price.
So coming back to the chimney again,
Yeah.
because I guess like coming back to my decision about my chimney,
Yeah.
it's still there. I haven't taken it down. And so I
In
guess
the last
the
5 minutes. Yeah, I mean,
pardon?
it is easy to do, but it's not that easy to do.
Um, but like I guess the thing I've always thought about is insurance, right? So insurance is my backup for if that scenario does happen.
Ooh.
Okay, am I going to learn something new about this? Is this going to make me more convinced to take my chimney down?
My thinking on that
Yes.
is if your house gets damaged in a big old earthquake,
Yeah.
how many houses do you think have also got damaged in said big old earthquake? And how many builders do you think we have? Because, like, we know Christchurch, to get through everyone's claims, it took like, a good 3 years. And then we're still settling claims kind of 10 plus years later. It takes time. So if that's something that you're happy to live with, then that's fine. There is insurance. It definitely does its job, but there's only so many people who are around to actually fix that. So you kind of think, actually, do you want to live with the fact that unless I don't know, Kate, you might be a very talented builder and you might have good builder friends. I don't know, but these are kind of things that you kind of think, oh, actually, do I want to be at the end of the queue but it takes like however many years for my claim to actually get settled because everyone else has also got claims. And then and I've actually got a big hole through my roof. And at
Mm,
what point am I able to get access to the people to actually make it better? Because there is going to be someone at the end of the queue. Now, you might be at
yeah,
the start of the queue, you might get really, really lucky, but there
yeah,
is going to be someone at the end of the queue, and it's just the way it goes. Because you can't do such a big operation in such a short time. So in the time that I think people think, oh, it'll be fine. And I kind of go, oh, at very least, it's gonna be like weeks, like at very least.
yeah.
Never mind.
And,
Yeah, and I
like,
like,
if we are being realistic and lots of chimneys have come down because there was even, demand after Cyclone Gabrielle for builders to, get in and, um, you know, get things back to normal as quickly as possible. Probably looking at more months to years on that one, hey, unless it's a big gaping hole and you're in the middle of winter, you're gonna be living with a tarp over your roofs.
yeah,
Um,
well, it's gonna happen to
yeah.
someone. Yeah,
That's something I hadn't actually thought about it. So, thanks for adding that one to the story. Maybe my chimney might be bumped up in priority.
maybe. Yeah. So in this episode, you have learned what you can do about natural hazards, including how you can assess the risk to your property and then how you can reduce that risk. So please give us a follow and a share. Contact us to share what you've done so you're safe as houses, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.